So, hey everyone. As promised, I wanted to do a quick overview of our close reading activities and sort of what that entails, because it's a skill that some people aren't super familiar with. This will be the first time doing this for a lot of you, and that's totally fine. This is something I picked up in college as well. So this is not like something that you should have been taught in high school and nobody taught you. This is totally acceptable to be learning now. So if it feels overwhelming, that's okay. We're going to continue to work on it, and it's a skill that we will get better with practice as we keep going. So just I've given you a definition here, and pay no attention to the creative writing. This was from a different class, and I was too lazy to delete it, I guess. But I've given you a definition of close reading here, something along the lines of a careful and concise reading of a particular and brief passage of a text. Again, the emphasis is on the specifics, right? On the choices that the author makes to sort of better understand what the author was trying to do with those specific choices. So really, it's just instead of just reading over a paragraph or a page or a chapter, it's really digging into what that author is doing in those sections. It's not meant to be something you would do with like an entire book, although you could do that. It's really meant to be something you would do with a small section, which is why with our close reading assignments, we're going to be reading small excerpts of novels or nonfiction pieces or short stories. But you are always really only tasked with looking at small chunks of even that reading. So our first reading, as you'll see posted, is Charlotte's Web, and it's I think 7 or 8 pages. I might be wrong on that, but it's about 7 or 8 pages of fairly easy prose. But you could really decide to just focus on 1 or 2 of those pages or one large paragraph and work with that. It really depends on what you want to do. If you are having difficulties focusing in on a small section, please feel free to look at the chapter as a whole, the section as a whole, the whole short story, whatever it is we're looking at. I've given you another definition here for syntax, which is just patterns and formations in sentence structures, because it may be a word I use, and I just want to make it clear what we're talking about. So when we do a close reading, and there will be an example of the first few after you've had a chance to try them out, so don't fret about the first couple ones because we will talk about them, and I will show you some examples of what I pull out and kind of go from there. So what I've tried to do in this sheet here, if it lets me do what I need to do here, there we go, is I've tried to break it down into 3 levels of close reading. And this was just something that, again, a professor of mine in college had come up with. And a lot of people, when they do this, they do it slightly different ways. But this is how I was taught it, and this is how I kind of prefer it. So you'll see there are 3 levels of choices an author makes. And I start with on level 1 with the sort of smallest, most specific things they're doing. And I've given you here in the parentheses some very specific things like word choices, sentence structures, things like punctuation, and then typographic things like italics, syntax, which I gave you the definition earlier, and then grammatical choices. So in these examples, or in this one example, which is not a text we're going to read it in full, but it's an example I've used right here. It's the short story Young Goodman Brown by Nathaniel Hawthorne. So I've pulled this example here, and then I've highlighted more than a few things that we're going to then look at in the example sections, which are these italicized sections. So level 1 again, right? I'll read the passage really quick. So it says, Young Goodman Brown came forth at sunset in the street of Salem village, but put his head back after crossing the threshold to exchange a parting kiss with his young wife. And Faith, as the wife was aptly named, thrust her own pretty head into the street, letting the wind play with the pink ribbons of her cap while she called to Goodman Brown. So that's the section we're going to focus on for all 3 of these levels. So for level 1, and that's right here, I put that, notice the alliteration used twice here. Sunset, street, Salem village, right? Repetition of the S sound, right? Specific word choices like thrust and pretty head stand out as well, as they seem almost like violent or condescending, and that definitely plays into the story as it goes on. And you'll see those words in there, right? Notice the wife's name as well, right? So we have this idea of Faith, which is definitely a interesting name when it comes to something written during the Salem witch trials in a very religious area. The two sentences both have a choppiness to them that makes them feel unnatural because of the author's use of commas, and I tried to pause as I was reading it. The commas seem to create an unease. And finally, the detail of sunset cues us into the nighttime setting, which may set the mood appropriately for what follows. Some of this stuff, you're going to be like, this is too simple. Like, why am I even doing this? But I think it's just really important to note, right? Young Goodman Brown came forth at sunset. So we know it's not the daytime. We know that night is coming and that the potential bad or scary things that are going to happen in this story, spoiler alert, happen at night. And that makes sense in a sort of horror-ish term, right? And just the name, right? Faith, her name pops up. And I'm just like, that's interesting. Why is her name Faith? Does it have to do with the double meaning of faith, and then does it have to do with religion, something along those lines? And then again, just the word choices, things like thrust and pretty head, those can just stand out to be sort of interesting word choices. The setting of Salem is also obviously loaded with tons of information for people who are from New England, and people from all over the country know Salem for a lot of different reasons, some good, some bad. So again, these are just some examples. I don't want to overwhelm you with talking about them ad nauseum, but this is, I think, just a few things to talk about, right? So if we move on to level 2, level 2 contains a broader formal elements throughout the passage. So that could be tone, overall structure, perspective, characterization, setting, and style. Some things we've already even noted before. And I added here, the choppiness may signal some potential conflict that emerges later on, which it does. The setting of Salem, obviously the witch trials, and the use of sunset gives us a slight sense of overall unease about what is to come. And these are things that I already talked about in level 1. So a lot of times you will be focusing on a level 1 example, and that will then sort of dovetail into a level 2 example. So you'll say, oh, Salem, S sound, Salem, Salem. Oh, wait, witch trials, witches, right? Then horror, creepy things. And then all of a sudden you're moving on to level 2 with tone and things like that. And then even further, level 3, which is the biggest stuff, right? Thematic elements, so content, themes, issues, questions. And I put the name of the wife, Faith, is important as the character's faith is tested throughout the story as it goes on, if you read the whole thing. The pink ribbon comes into play throughout, so there's an idea about color. And then obviously religion, which I already mentioned, plays a major role throughout the text. So I don't want to belabor a point because this is something that whenever we do this in this class, it's always a bit of a hurdle at the beginning. And I think just knowing that helps people feel a little bit better about doing this. I will be recording a video and giving you guys some potential for a Zoom call about the close reading specifically, because I don't want it to be 5-6 weeks in and people still aren't grasping it or comfortable doing it. So after your first example, which I said already is Charlotte's Web, I will be posting a video where I go over a few sections of what you're going to read, and we talk about how that works. And hopefully those little discussions will help sort of spur you on to continue working. So again, any questions about this video and about the close reading assignments in general, please feel free to let me know at any point. If you're having any difficulties with it, I don't want you to be struggling. And just know that as long as you're putting in a good faith effort into this, you will be doing the work and getting the credit for it. I'm not asking you to look for the same examples I look for or someone else in the class is looking for. You're going to pull out the things that you want to look at, and you're going to get used to pulling out those same things in every text we totally find. So don't worry so much about that. Okay? So again, please feel free to be in contact with me at any point, and I am always... Thank you.